All right, guys, let's get into it. This is our beautiful brisket. This is a 13.5 pound brisket. Beautiful point, leading into a beautiful flat. Just gonna show you what you're gonna need. This is what I'm using. I'm using black pepper. I'm using my QQ dust. I'm gonna use some apple cider vinegar to spritz or mop the brisket with. And I'm gonna be using some Himalayan pink salt to go along with my QQ dust. I'll explain that later. All right, and then you're gonna need some knives to trim this brisket up. And that's basically it, man. So let's go ahead and get into it. And I'll show you exactly how to get this done. Not gonna be a lot of talking, more showing than talking. Y'all stay tuned. All right, I'm gonna say this in the camera. All right, so the grains of this brisket, I think it's important that I talk about this. The grains in this brisket run this way. A little trick that we used to do in barbecue competitions is, so you know that you need to cut against the grain when you do brisket. A little trick we used to do is just come down here on the end and cut your little notch out. That way you know when this brisket becomes, when you finish cooking the brisket, that this is the route you need to take when it comes to cutting your brisket. Because a lot of times once you season it and it starts to darken up after you finish cooking it, you won't be able to tell where the grains are. So if you're new to this, cut you just a small slither where the grains are running so you'll know to cut against the grain. All right, very important. If you notice, I just wanted to come through here and take off a lot of this fat that I think, a lot of this is hard fat. It's not gonna cook down. You don't have to take it off. I like to take it off because I think if you prep the brisket right before you cook it, less work for you to do after it's done. That's good to go. I took that nice hard piece of fat off up here. That's good to go. Nice aerodynamic style brisket. Over here, everything is pretty much good to go. I'm not gonna fuss with this little bit of silver skin on top of this. I got something to take care of that, so y'all stay tuned. Let's go ahead and get it seasoned up. All right, I want to explain this. This is my kosher salt, not my kosher salt. This is my pink salt. This is my seasoning. Now, I don't want to go heavy with the seasoning because this has powders in it. And when you start to wrap the brisket, what'll happen a lot of times when you go too heavy with these powdery rubs or seasonings, it'll start to cake. So to make sure that I get it seasoned correctly, you can use kosher salt. I just happen to have Himalayan pink salt. I'm going to hit the front of the brisket, the top of the brisket, the meaty side of the brisket with the salt first, and then I'm gonna lightly come over it with my rub. I'm not packing it in or nothing. I'm just dusting it. Hence the name QQ dust. Yeah, boy. So I'm just lightly dusting it. You don't want to cake it on. Because like I say, you'll pay for it after you finish wrapping the brisket, especially if you use aluminum foil. It's going to cake on you. Last little bit of pepper, heavy coat. And that's it. We're going to let this brisket sit here and tack up. When I say tack up, I mean we're going to allow the salt and the sugars to go in and pull out the moisture, get us a nice tack on this, and then we'll be ready to put it in the smoker. Yeah, boy. All right, guys, here's my brisket. Probably about 5 minutes after I season it. It's still tacking up. You can start to see some of the salt and sugar pulling out the moisture right there. But pretty much it's still getting tacky. But anyway, my point is if you have a rack, we're gonna place this brisket on the rack and we're gonna cook it on the rack. That way, we can maneuver it much better. We don't have to put it directly on the hot grates. So again, if you have a baking rack, and I'm gonna be cooking on a barrel pit, but if any pit you're in, if you have a baking rack, use that to put your brisket on. It'll help you be able to move it much better. Yes, sir. Let y'all see the top. It ain't gotta be pretty, as long as it's delicious. Yes, sir. I just wanna show you, I'm gonna be using Cowboys all natural lump charcoal. In my barrel, you can use just regular charcoal, anything will work, but this is what I'll be using. And if you didn't know, lump charcoal is pretty much just burned down wood. So let's get to it. All right, y'all, we got it in the pit. If you notice, I got a water pan down there. And I'm gonna go ahead and get it closed up before this lump charcoal starts to flare up, but it is in there, ready to go. Looking at my TK cooker, temp's gonna be right around 250, 275. Stay tuned, phase one. All right, guys, just a quick little tip. This is what I do when I don't wanna be bothered with trying to remember times on my cooks. I use my dot. This is an Echo dot. Mine is not called Alexa, mine is called Echo. Echo, set a timer for 2.5 hours to check the brisket.
Check the brisket timer, 2 hours and 30 minutes, starting now.
Echo, set a reminder for 5 hours to check the brisket.
Okay, I'll remind you in 5 hours.
Yes, sir, y'all. Easy way to get it done, y'all. Sit on the couch and keep drinking. You ain't got to worry about your times. Yes, sir. I just want to show you something real quick. This is my apple cider vinegar that I had earlier. I'm mixing it with coconut sugar. I'm just heating it up on the stove real quick. Some people call this a gastrique. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to allow it to cool down. I'm then going to transfer it to my squeeze bottle. And this is what I'm going to use to keep the brisket moist. So again, you can use apple cider vinegar by itself. Some people use apple juice. I'm just using it with a little coconut sugar, which is not that sweet actually, but it's gonna give it a good color. It's gonna give it some of that good acidity. So stay tuned. Yeah, boy. All right, y'all.
The check the brisket timer is done.
Let's go check the brisket. All right, y'all. There she is, 2.5 hours in. Got a few pockets of liquid there. I'm not gonna start using my mop yet. I'm not gonna my spritz yet. I'm not gonna do it yet. I'm gonna wait till probably about the 4-hour mark. I'm gonna let it tack up a little bit more. So y'all stay tuned. This is 2.5 hours in. I need to add some more water to my water pan as well. Yeah, boy. All right, guys. Now we're 3.5 hours in. Look at the color. You can still see it's kind of moist and tacky up here. So I'm just gonna spritz like right up top. Just let it fall down. I don't want to mess up my bark. Edges. 3.5 hours in, my water pan is empty. I'm gonna let it ride out for about 4.5 before I check it. All right, y'all, this is 5.5 hours in. As you can see, the brisket is really moist. I spritz like, after the 4-hour mark, I spritz like every 30 minutes, but it's looking pretty good. I'm not gonna mess with it. My water pan is still good. I'm gonna let it rock out to about 6.5 hours. And then we'll start the whole wrap process. But the key factor in cooking the brisket is basically just leave it alone. Let it do its thing. So y'all stay tuned. Before I do that though, I'm gonna spritz it one last time. Spritz it real good. Back on the pit, y'all. We're gonna let it keep it rock on roll. We'll take this thing to about 205, 208. But right now, we're just gonna let it keep on rocking and rolling. Total cook time probably gonna be probably about 9 to 10 hours on this one. All right, guys, since I wrapped it, it's been about an hour and a half. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna check the temp. I'm going right down in the middle. And it says I'm at 193. So I'm taking this to 205, 208. So I'm gonna let it keep on rocking and rolling. Probably gonna need about another hour on this, which will give it a total cook time of like 8.5, almost 9 hours. All right, guys, and just like that, 9 hours and 20 minutes, we're at 207. So let me go ahead and get the camera set up. You know what? Just stay there. I'm gonna show you exactly what it's looking like. You're gonna take the foil off. What you wanna do is you wanna take the foil off if you're gonna use foil. And at this point, what's happening is you're allowing all of this steam to get off of the meat, basically to help it stop cooking. And then once that steam stops coming off that meat, probably after about 10 minutes, you can cover it back up if you want to and allow this to rest at a minimum 1 hour before you do something with it. But I'll show y'all all of that, so just stay tuned, man. There we go. Beautiful 13.5-pound brisket, baby. Yes, sir. All right, guys, I put the aluminum foil back on the brisket loosely to cover it up. So now it's the resting process. What I'm gonna do now is put a towel over the aluminum foil and over the brisket and just let it sit here on my countertop and rest for an hour. If you have a cooler, stick it in the cooler for an hour, good to go. But pretty much the cooking process is stopped. We're just gonna allow it to come down in temp and get nice and juicy. Yes, sir.